what I'm going to do is jump into the presentation because I do want to give enough people enough time and to ask questions. So my remarks about the league will be as part of the presentation just to keep it all together, okay? If that's okay, Jeannie.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, great. Okay, so I did hear Jean share such very, very kind and gracious remarks about me. And there are so many treasures here, Jean being one of them, who is much braver than I ever am to actually run for office. So thank you. And also thank you, Secular Arizona, for the work you do for keeping church and state separate. It's so important, especially when you come from varying faiths, that we protect the right to worship the way we wish, and if not, the way we don't. Okay, so thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, appreciate it. Okay, so I am going to share my screen, which is, I believe, what we said I could do. So I shall do that if that's okay with you all, and launch into my presentation, which is, I believe, what we want to do. Okay, Jeannie, can you see the screen?
No, I cannot.
Okay, it sometimes takes a little while to get to you all, okay?
Okay.
Okay, let me try that again. Share my screen. And I would like to share screen too. Okay, let's do it this way.
Aha, there it is. Excellent. Now, I'm sorry, I think you just said it. Do you want me to wait for questions till the end, Pinny?
I think it might be wiser because the depth of information is, Jean, just to avoid any rabbit holes down one particular proposition itself, I'm really okay with whatever you all want to do. I'm here to be of service to you all and the community. So I'm really flexible if that's okay with you, okay?
Okay,
So
I'll tell you what, Pinny, just so you know, I'll go ahead and monitor the chat. I'm going to turn my camera off while you're presenting. And if like anything comes up where I feel like it needs to be answered right away, I'll turn my screen back on. But for now, I'm just going to pass it over to you because I need to take notes today, okay?
Okay, all right, okay. My theme today is no before you go and no before you vote, which requires that we are informed voters. And you all know, I'm speaking to the choir here, you all know that it's the informed voter that is going to make the difference in not just this election, every election. So with that, I'm going to launch into about the League of Women Voters so that I'm being beautiful about crafting or the framing who we are in terms of whatever we present. So we are in a nonpartisan grassroots civic organization, and I'd really like to emphasize nonpartisan in this way. We host debates, and it's not uncommon for individuals to say, well, why are you inviting Green Party or Libertarian or whoever? We're not bipartisan, we are nonpartisan, which means we neither support nor oppose any candidate or any political party. And therefore, what we are most interested in is that everybody votes, but we want them to be informed voters and be active participants in the government. Our mission is to empower voters and defend democracy. And we do believe that and every single eligible voter, should they desire, should be voting, and we should all be working to make sure they desire to vote and are voting. So with that being said, I'm going to kind of walk to the next slide. I'm going to do a fairly quick overview on how a proposition gets on the ballot. And I say fairly quick because the Secular Arizona members are really well knowledgeable. You're all at the Capitol, you know what's going on. But just in case you've got a couple of folks that didn't, so I'm going to do my due diligence. Here is what we are not going to do, because if I do that, then today's activity is not education, it's lobbying. And that is, we won't be talking about what we have submitted arguments in support or opposition to, which is essentially where do we stand on these propositions, or to tell you how to vote, okay? Now, I will tell you that we will spend quite a bit of time constantly referencing vote411.org. And if you have not used it, we encourage you to use it, and I have a very special ask of you all to help us shame candidates who don't provide information on this site. So I'll come to that a little bit later. As you all know, we're all working to make sure that the voters absolutely vote the full ballot. So we encourage you to share with your voters and your constituents that go to Vote 411, use the 2024 Clean Elections Guide, and vote the full ballot. We also encourage you to share with your members and others. There'll be candidates, then there'll be judges, and then there'll be propositions. And today our discussion is on propositions, so there is an urgency to tell the voters, don't stop at the top, start from the bottom, because those propositions are what's going to impact their lives and how they can actually, and the laws that are going to make their lives better or worse. So please be sure you share that message. That's our message to everybody. This is my quick background for everyone on democracy the Arizona way. That's what we call it, because we're one of the few major ballot initiative states where citizens have a right to actually make law. And it's in our Constitution. While the legislature can actually, that's their job, to pass legislation, there is a right reserved for the people in our Constitution to propose laws and amendments, and to enact or reject any laws or amendments at the polls, independent of the legislature. And this is very critical, because we speak out on this all the time, which is, we have a right as citizens to be the checks and balance on the legislature. The other thing that I wanted to be sure we're all really making sure we understand is the difference between an initiative and a referendum. Jean, I'm going rather fast on this because I really want to spend the time on the propositions, but if someone wants to ask a question on what I'm saying generally, I'm happy to answer that question, okay? We have the right to enact legislation, and it's through the ballot process. And there are two things we can do. We can initiate an initiative. That's our initiative to make a new law or to change an existing law or amend the Constitution. The second is a referendum, where we put a stop to a law that we think is very harmful to us, our communities, and our state, okay? So the citizens can initiate legislation either at a state level, which is we're changing state law, or at the constitutional level, which is we're changing the Arizona Constitution. In Arizona, we also have the veto referendum. And then we also need to recognize, and this piece is so critical for this 2024 election, because the state legislature has wielded its very narrow margin power to put in front of the voters legislation that is potentially harmful. The Arizona state legislature can bring it forward, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes. But here's something a lot of folks don't know, that the Arizona Commission on Salaries for elective state officers is another body that can place measures on the ballot. So it's the citizens, it's the legislature, and the Arizona Commission for Election Officers. Okay, so let's talk about the power we have. Initiative power resides with us. Legislative power, the power to repeal legislation and to amend legislation is in the hands of the legislature. So we can bring in laws, we can stop laws, we can amend laws, okay? That's important to always recognize. And we've had this power since our inception as a state. In fact, one of the first initiatives that passed was the women's right to vote, okay? Some of our members say, well, we weren't really given the right to vote. We took it. It was ours anyway. We just wanted to make sure they don't take it away, which absolutely resonates with our issues on our right to manage and make decisions about our families and our bodies. So the next thing I want to jump into is this whole legislative power to bring measures onto a ballot. And we all know that in this last 2 legislative cycles, with a governor who was not afraid to veto really bad legislation, with a very slim majority, the party that's in power in the Arizona legislature decided to bring forward resolutions that they passed with such a slim vote, 1 or 2 votes, and that's how it got on the ballot, okay? So unlike citizens initiatives, and Jeannie and so many on this call have been involved with the SOS initiatives, the fair wage, the minimum wage, and now the abortion rights. And we know how hard it is. We've been out in the sun collecting signatures, the thousands and thousands of signatures we have to collect. And so really, it's an unfair and uneven battle, and hopefully we can do what needs to be done to push back against it and maybe really start thinking about strengthening citizens' rights to bring forward initiatives. Okay, so let's talk about what's on your ballot. 13 propositions. Before these propositions came, and Jeannie should know, I think she's been lobbying, and we all, on our end at the league have certainly heard intel on the back end, is that the goal was to stuff the ballots so that the abortion initiative wouldn't pass, so that there would be fatigue and people would want to just say no on everything. So now what I want to say to you is we have a lot of progressive groups basically saying vote no on everything, vote yes on the proposition. We as the league disagree vehemently on that issue. We believe that yes, you should vote. You pick what you want to pick, but don't vote blanket, because you can then be voting no on bonds that impact schools. You could be voting no on funding for municipalities that desperately need it, especially in municipalities where they tend to have low voter turnout, yet they need desperately the resources. So our message is not vote no on everything and vote yes on just one thing. Our message is take your time and vote on everything. Don't just make, don't just check without thinking it through and the impact it's going to have. So I'm going to take a deep breath for a second. I'm trying to go fast, Jeannie. Let me see if there are any questions.
So far, we don't have any questions, and I do know for a fact that we do have 2 elected officials here. So Rep. Patty Contreras is here, and we also have a school board member in Catalina Foothills, Jacqueline, I hope I'm saying your name right, Devoli. So no questions yet, but you just helped Jacqueline's race, I hope, by telling everybody to vote bottom up, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, vote bottom up, and more importantly, when it comes to propositions, please don't just do a blanket vote, take your time. You could be harming your own community in which you live if you don't think it through. So we are really pushing back on that narrative in the progressive circles, Jeannie, and you know who they are because you and I hang out with the same groups, okay? So we'll move on to the next, and glad to see additional citizens running for office, especially very important school board and city council, okay? So the first thing I want to share with you is the way we've organized our presentation is by grouping the propositions, okay? And at the end of this, I also want to share with you that we actually have a booklet we put together. The Secretary of State booklet is 356 pages. Our league booklet is a lot smaller. If you're a digital person, go to Vote 411. You'll see the information I'm presenting on Vote 411. If you're someone who wants a piece of paper in your hand, we will make available the booklets, and so we'll try to get it to different places where you can pick it up, okay? So the very first one we're going to talk about is, of course, the abortion initiative, which is Proposition 109. And you should anticipate that we're a women's, we're the League of Women Voters, women's issues are top and front center for us. So, of course, that is the first proposition I'm going to talk about. This next slide that I'm going to show you is how we present all the ballot propositions, not just at this presentation, but on our documentation on Vote for 1-1, and also in the booklet that we're going to print out, that we will have available. The booklet is actually already ready. At some point, and I'm still waiting for some clearance, is that we will make a PDF available of the booklet. So if you want to print it on your own, you can do that too, okay? Okay, so many in this group are very active in working on the campaign here, okay? And sometimes they take a little umbrage with us because we are not willing to put our thumb on the scale, and we can't because we really need to be balanced. So it's a citizens initiative to amend the Arizona Constitution. Our big interest is to make sure the voters understand if they vote yes, what does it mean? And if they vote no, what does it mean? We have also captured from the 356 pages of arguments that we reviewed every one of those arguments to pull together really a recurring theme of what the people who support it are arguing and what the people who are against it are arguing. We do not call this pro and con because that's already a biased statement. We're just presenting, hey, people who are for it, these are their major arguments. These people who are against it, these are their major arguments. I want to do a little background update for you all. All the 13 ballot propositions, we also analyzed local ballot measures, were analyzed by 50 league members with a wide range of skills and perspectives, and they spend quite some time doing the heavy lift on doing the analysis. So we don't really have 2 or 3 people sitting in the background. What you have is 2 or 3 people checking and make sure they're not introducing biases in here, but that's really how we do this work. Okay, so what is a yes vote on this going to do? It's going to establish a constitutional right to abortion. It's going to prevent the state from interfering with person's right. I've had people say, well, the legislature can interfere. Well, actually, to amend the Constitution, the legislature would have to come back to the voters to do that. It defines fetal viability when the healthcare professional believes the fetus can likely survive outside the womb. And it allows abortions after viability to protect the life and health of the pregnant individual without state interference. And this is really important, that is prohibiting the state from criminalizing and penalizing anyone who assists someone seeking an abortion. The no vote would mean we will not establish a constitutional right. The current abortion restriction, which is the 15-week ban, will continue to be in effect. It also means that because we don't have the constitutional protection, that the state can further add restrictions to the existing state law. It will potentially allow the state regulation of abortion without constitutional protections. And it doesn't provide new protections, which is the penalties to individuals and healthcare providing assistance. High level draw attention to this is that, this is a promise to women and families that they are empowered to make their own decisions about their own bodies and healthcare decisions. It's a promise to doctors that we trust them to make the best recommendation to their patients. On the opposition side, they say that this will allow for the termination, which some consider to be the taking of human life, that the patient's safety might be jeopardized. It'll harm vulnerable patients by prohibiting prosecution of those who help to assist. Some of that narrative was further explained as, sex offenders forcing their victims to get abortion. And then they said that it could increase the abortions. And so those are the two pieces for the for and against arguments summarized, and what a yes vote would mean and what a no vote would mean. Should I move on, Jeannie, or should I anticipate questions?
Oh, hold on. Okay, let me see. There was a question up here coming from Pam. It's not really related to this one, but she wonders, is there a way to change up the order that items appear on ballots some days so we don't have to push people so much to vote the whole ballot?
So the ballot process, well, first and foremost, I'm going to come back to what I said earlier, which is they need to vote the full ballot, because when they don't, they are going to be harming, bonds. And I really worry about bonds and municipalities, because they have such a low voter turnout, and the legislature tried to pass a law basically saying, unless you have X percentage of voters voting at the municipal level, this bond will not pass, even if it passes with a simple majority. And, those are dangerous places for our local city. Those are the bonds and propositions that impact your lives day in and day out. Second is, if they are numbered, okay, and they're numbered in the order in which they were submitted to some extent, and approval through the legal process to the Legislative Council. So it's really in numbering order. Where you can exert a little bit of influence is to try to influence the description that's put out, which is often where there is misinformation sent. Now, if we could reorder it on a ballot, so could others. And so we should always be mindful of that. And so I'll say that.
And I think maybe the real issue here is maybe we need a change in the makeup of our legislature so that we don't have how many ever, referred ballots, 11 or whatever it was, because, that's not really what we know. That means that they just aren't able to play nicely in the sandbox with their current governor. That's basically what it means. So we just need to find folks who are able to work together collaboratively with, both the executive branch, the legislative branch, just like everything else. So I'll keep out of it. Keep going, Pinny, because you've got a lot to cover.
Jeannie, you triggered something that's very, very critical. Really, as citizens, we have a right to change some parts of our Constitution. And one of the things is to really consider this legislative power for referrals to require maybe a 2/3 majority before it can be referred to the public, because then they got to get along. If we have 2/3 in order to approve finances and a budget, then we ought to have 2/3, because there's a financial cost to this that we are bearing. And more importantly, it'll force them to be mindful of what is it that they're putting in front of the voters. So that's something for us to all be very seriously thinking about, is doing a heavy lift on that front. Jeannie, should I go on? Jean?
Yeah, please do. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Okay. The next two are propositions that impact the administration of elections and voting rights. We are very eager to follow this. We've done a lot of work in this area at the legislature and through this ballot analysis. And the two propositions that fall in this category are Proposition 133 and Proposition 134. Okay, and we'll talk about, I'm sorry, Proposition 133 and Proposition 140. So let's take Proposition 130. This is basically a proposition tied to how elections are held by cities, okay? And if you vote yes on this, you're basically saying, yes, I want the Arizona Constitution amended to require that cities follow the state law in primary elections, if you have city primary elections. And it'll prohibit cities from implementing charters, which the charter cities have, and laws of policy that conflict with state law, and it will remove local control over the cities and how they run the election, okay? A no vote would be that we keep the current primary election laws unchanged, where cities have the ability to maintain control, and we preserve the ability of cities to make decisions best suited for their communities, okay? Those who are for it basically claim that the partisan primaries allow voters to have. So what they're really looking for is to force local municipalities to hold partisan elections, even though that's not how it's stated. So they believe that partisan elections will allow voters to get better choices in local elections. They claim we have 5 parties, they can choose from that. There's an alternate format like, and they're against ranked choice voting or any such alternate format. And they believe that smaller parties like Libertarian and Green are less likely to appear in the ballots if there are just top 2 primaries. This is sort of an anti-ranked choice voting statement as part of the people who are for this, that this would stop ranked choice voting. And independent voters can still participate in partisan primaries. Well, go ahead, Jean.
I have a quick question. So, would this mandate that school board elections would become partisan and city councils?
Yep.
Oh boy,
Yep.
no, I think that, okay, good, thank you.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? In the language, what they're basically saying is you have to, okay, let's back up a minute, Jean. What is the state law regarding primaries? It's partisan and it's a closed primary. So the nonsense that independents can participate is actually, nonsense, okay? But the state law is that, our primaries are partisan. And so this is a way to impose partisanship into school boards and local, All right, whatever your opinion, I want to answer your question as accurately as I can on this front, okay? All right. All right, so may I go on to the next one? And Jeannie, we have our brochure is much more in depth in the analysis. Hard to do that in a slide deck, so I'm kind of rushing through
you
it. Okay?
Understood. Yeah, no, you just go ahead and I'll stop when it's relevant, but this is good information. So you just keep going because I want to make sure we can get through as much as possible, okay?
Okay. Proposition 140 is a citizens initiative. There's a group that's bringing it forward called Make Elections Fair. You saw some information in the news media recently where the Secretary of State is accused as having a bias towards this particular proposition. What we want to draw your attention to is this. If you vote yes on this because you believe it's open primaries, it's ranked choice voting, please vote making sure you read the proposition accurately. Basically, a yes vote means you're going to allow the legislature to determine the process and number of candidates advancing to the general election after an open primary. It'll also allow the legislature to decide on a voter ranking system, which is not necessarily a ranked choice voting system, if 3 or more candidates advance. And I say that because the legislature has already tried to pass laws saying no ranked choice voting ever, okay? If you vote yes, you're saying, yes, I want open primaries so that everybody can participate in a primary election. It also sets uniform signature requirements for all primary candidates, and it restricts public funds from being used for political party elections. So right now, we are using public funds for primary elections, and this basically says, okay, if you aren't going to have open primaries, then you can't use public funds, okay? A no vote basically says we're going to keep the semi-closed primary system and because registered Republicans and Democrat voters can select their party's candidates for the general election. So the people who support it, this is a citizens-led initiative. So there is sort of, there are people from, all walks of life who sort of see this as a way, who support this, okay? It'll increase the voter turnout. We all know that primaries have very low voter turnout, okay? The current system will exclude independent, it proposes that this will solve the issue of current independent voters not being able to participate in a primary. And this will enfranchise marginalized groups, and they mentioned them, okay?
Pinny,
yes.
Pinny, we have a quick question here coming from Richard. He's asking what happens if both of these initiatives pass, the 133 and the 140?
So The 133 has to do with municipal elections, okay?
Okay.
This has to do with the state primaries. I mean, this has to do with the primaries,
Okay.
which are, yeah, exactly.
Okay, so,
And
okay,
what will
thank you.
happen is
Yeah.
they don't, in a way, they don't contradict each other, because if 133 passes, then all of those elections become partisan, okay? Have to be partisan, which means then this would kick in, which would, if this passes, then everybody can vote in all partisan elections. The question really on the table is, do you want municipal and school board elections to be partisan? And the second question is, if the legislature has the decision making on who shows up in the general ballot, then how does that help the notion of open primaries? Those are things people have to think about very carefully. When the signatures were gathered, a lot of voters were told, oh, this open primary and it supports ranked choice voting. And we want to, as a league, be very clear that, you know, none of the research and in talking to the campaign verifies that's in fact the case, okay? So can I go on to the next one, or is there questions
Yes, no,
on this
please,
one?
yeah, no, please go ahead. You're good.
Okay, all right. And I'm asking that because these are heavy topics and it's important for your members and everybody to kind of get a good sense of this, okay? The next one, which we as the league are very worried about, are any proposition that impact the citizens' initiative process. The league has used this initiative process very effectively in the following in the past. It was the league that took leadership so that we would have an independent redistricting commission. The league took leadership so that we would be able to do we would have a judicial review board. The league took initiative to provide leadership so that we would have the Clean Elections Commission. So for us, you know, this is like personal. We worry about the citizens' right to initiative process. We don't always agree with every initiative that's out there, but we really believe very strongly in fighting for this particular right in our Constitution, and any efforts to sort of impact it worries us a great deal. You know, you have to vote the way you want, but it is a worry for us that constitutional rights should be maintained, especially when it allows citizens to be part of the governing process, okay? So there are two, Proposition 134 and 136, okay? 134 has to do with the number of signatures gathered, the threshold for signatures, and 36 has to do with the ability to challenge citizens' initiative even before it gets on the ballot. So I will jump into 134, okay? 134 essentially is a proposition. So here's what a yes vote means. It would mean that we would require the ballot measure collection from all 30 legislative districts. So ballot measures cannot be collected just from major legislative districts. And in other words, no legislative districts can be, you cannot turn in a ballot initiative that does not have representation from every legislative district. That's 30 legislative districts. Signature requirements. So for statewide initiative, you have to have 10% from every legislative district, 10% from every single 30 legislative districts, 15 for constitutional amendments, and 5% for the referendum. So every legislative district has initiative gatherers have to be in every legislative district, can depend on just the big counties and try to get it through. If, for example, if it fails to meet the requirement percentage in any district, so if LD 97, as an example, could not meet that 10% for a statewide, then that measure cannot get on the ballot, period, okay? So that's really what this is. This is to ensure, the claim is it's to ensure voices from smaller legislative and rural districts, okay? The no vote would be the current ballot, the current rules, which is it's a statewide issue, it's a statewide measure, you collect the signatures statewide. And the current threshold is 10% for initiative statewide. It's not restricted by legislative district, 15% for amendments, and 5% for referendum. No district specific signature requirements needed to qualify for the ballot. Okay, so the 4 people say, hey, it boosts voter involvement by requiring signature from all the districts, okay? It also ensures both urban and rural areas have a voice. It aligns Arizona with over half of the US states that are already using such an approach, mirrors the principle of geographic representation, promotes equal representation by encouraging statewide participation in the initiative process. The against people are saying, hey, wait, it undermines the citizens' initiative process, making it more difficult for everyday Arizonans to bring issues. It would significantly increase the cost for signature gathering, hard for grassroots efforts. Collecting signature from 30 legislative districts would be nearly impossible because signatures are gathered by regular citizens, especially in rural areas. Only well-funded groups could manage the logistical challenge, and a vote no would preserve what is currently the Arizona citizen-driven initiative process. So that is 134. The next one, which is 136, basically, and I will be on PBS on Horizon on the 30th, representing the league's stand on this particular proposition. I won't talk about it here, but just so you're all aware, okay? The Proposition 136 is, in a very simple word, says, hey, citizens can, a lawsuit can be brought on a ballot proposition even before it clears signature and gets to the ballot, and it can be challenged on the basis of constitutionality. So if you say yes, you are saying that, yes, we're going to allow legal challenges to voter initiated. This is only for citizen-initiated ballot measures. We're going to permit courts to block measures from appearing on the ballot if the courts deem it to be unconstitutional. And this, of course, will amend the Arizona Constitution to enable pre-election lawsuits. Okay. A no vote would basically say we're going to keep the current law requiring the constitutional challenge to be after the measure has been approved by the voter, not before, and not even before it gets on the ballot. And this would also prevent lawsuits from blocking measures before they even appear on the ballot, and challenges can only occur after measures passed, okay? So the people who are for it claim that we need to do this because out-of-state special interests often push unworkable measures. This allows the Arizona Supreme Court to make the decision, and only lawful measures will appear on the ballot. I just do want to make one comment is all measures that appear on the ballot have to go through a legislative review process and a legal review process. So I just wanted to be sure we all have that knowledge as we cogitate on this particular proposition, okay? Those who are against it, they believe that it undermines Arizona voters' voice, okay? And a no vote will protect our current process. The citizen initiative process already includes checks and balances, which I just mentioned. And then it could be used to block initiatives in court, empowering special interests, and really weakening the citizens' influence on the state laws. And the legislators are pushing this measure because they want to create barriers for direct democracy. Those are the people who are against it. That's their claim. I'll stop. There might be questions on those too.
There was a question actually. Richard asks, multiple suits were filed against current initiatives. Am I confused, or does the no vote points not make sense? So maybe if you could go back a slide so we can see. So I guess what he's asking is like he's seeing like we all do that there are already challenges to these ballot initiatives.
So Jeannie, those challenges are not to the constitutionality of the ballot initiative. Okay, they are to signature gathering, to the single subject, to the and it's important to understand what you can challenge is the process and the meeting those strict requirement laws for campaigns. Is they didn't file it properly, those things. It's the filing process. This proposition basically says we're challenging the content of this ballot initiative.
Okay. Okay. That no, and Richard says thank you. That brought clarity. So go ahead, because I know
Okay.
I know we're tight on time. Go ahead.
Yeah. But very important question, Jeannie. Okay, very important question, Jeannie. Okay, on this. All right. Next series is, we'll go a little faster probably. One is a proposition that impacts the power of the governor and the state agencies. Okay. This is a wonky and in the weeds, so I'll jump into 135, which is basically saying, hey, the governor cannot make emergency declarations on their own, and there's a process. So if you say yes, you're going to say that the legislature has to call a special session to extend any governor's emergency power after the emergency is declared. And exempt emergencies, of course, war, fire, or flood, and you have to have 1/3 of the legislature chamber to call a special session or end the governor's power during the emergency. Okay, the no vote would keep the governor's current emergency powers unchanged, and it requires 2/3 of the vote for a special session to extend an emergency declaration. Okay. So because I'm going to give you content later on, I will let you read the for and against arguments. I just want to be sure you know what you're doing if you vote yes versus you know what you're doing if you vote no, okay? So the next one is, oh, what am I missing? Yeah, I missed something. Oh, yeah. Oh, sorry. Proposition 350. This is not a change to the Constitution. This is a change to state law. And what this essentially, very much in the wonky weeds here, okay, is basically saying that, you know, if you vote yes, the state agency has to submit proposed rules with anything over 100,000 to the Office of Economic Opportunity, which is a different office than the current office that manages these kind of rulemaking. The no vote would basically mean, yeah, we'll keep the current laws, and the current laws have to be overseen by the Governor's Regulatory Review Council, GRRC, which is a bipartisan council with administrative oversight. Okay, so that's what this is, a little bit in the weeds, but I'm going to move past this to get to the last three, because I do want to give at least a few minutes for any questions or comments or, you know, whatever you want to tell me. Okay, so the next group has to do with judiciary, courts, and law enforcement, and there are three very specific pieces here. One is the legislature, the sort of a lifetime opportunity appointment for the judicial, the current judges. The second one has to do with life imprisonment for sex trafficking. And the third is the immigration border law enforcement. Okay, so let me take the very first one and walk you through that. This is a legislative referral, which means that, oh, no, this is a constitutional referral. Sorry. I have to fix it as I go along. So a yes vote would amend our Constitution. It would to remove judicial terms for judges on the Supreme Court, Court of Appeals, Court, Superior Courts. And essentially, once they're appointed, which means all the judges who are there right now are there for life, okay? And voters won't have a chance to make any decisions. And also it'll apply retroactively, which is if you, because this is already on the ballot, any decisions made by voters on this ballot will be null and voided by this particular proposition, okay? A no vote basically says, you know, the retention process we use now is what we want, and citizens should have a say in that retention process. The next one is the life imprisonment of sex trafficking of a child measure, and it eliminates current sentencing ranges for child sex trafficking convictions, mandate life imprisonment without the possibility of release, okay? A no vote would maintain the current sentencing guidelines, which is first offense is 13 years, one prior is 25, and two more is 30 years. And the last one that, oh, we aren't quite done with the last one, sorry, is the immigration and border law enforcement. And a yes vote basically says, these are all new crimes for undocumented individuals. If you say no, it maintains the current criminal laws, and it also retains the federal government's exclusive authority over deportation. A yes vote basically says that the state courts can deport people, and it criminalizes the selling of fentanyl. The last three, see how long it's taking for us to even understand these? Can you imagine our poor voters looking at these ballot propositions? These are propositions that impact wages, death benefits, and property taxes. So 138 would essentially amend the Constitution relating to tipped workers. 311 would be for first responders, and the 312 would be property taxes. Okay, so quickly on the 138, if you vote yes, you're saying you can allow employers to pay up to 25% less than minimum wage, because the assumption is the tips will make up the difference. And tipped wages may face reduced wages as business can pay below the current minimum. That's what you should know if you're going to vote yes. No vote says, hey, keep the current minimum law unchanged. They can pay tipped employees up to $3 less than the state hour minimum wage currently, and the total pay must at least equal the state's minimum wage, okay? Which is the current law as it exists, okay? So when you're voting no, you're keeping the current law, which is what it is. So the people who say this say, you know, it's going to help consumers by reducing costs. It's going to incentivize workers to provide high quality service, and it's going to retain workers and reduce costs for customers. If you're against it, you're basically saying, hey, it shifts the responsibility of wages from the employers to customers, widens the wage gap between tipped and non-tipped workers, increasing poverty for tipped employees. And then Prop 138, it just sort of disregards local income needs and strips communities of the power to set local wages, and it could increase the poverty rates, okay? This is the first responder criminal conviction fee, but this repeals on December 31st, 2032. It's a one-time benefit to the spouse of a dependent of a first responder killed in duty, and it's going to be funded with a $20 penalty fee for every criminal conviction. Let's see, a no vote will keep the current death benefit and no creation of a supplemental death benefit, no new $20 fee for criminal convictions. And the very last one would be Proposition 312, which is relating to property taxes. So this is, again, a legislative referral. A yes vote will allow the property owners to apply for a refund. Refunds cover documented costs spent to fix the issues and applies to law against illegal camping, loitering, or panhandling, and you all can draw your conclusions at what initiated this particular referendum. The no vote says, hey, we're going to retain the current laws and regulations, primary property tax payments, and no changes to existing rules for property tax refunds. I'm going to make a few more statements, and then hopefully you can still have some time. You do it just 1 hour, so my apologies. Please make sure you have your dates and you know 2 important rights, and you continue to amplify those, and that's the Voting Rights Act and the Help America Vote Act. We also want to do a plug. We are members of the Election Protection Coalition. We desperately need monitors, so we urge you to be spreading the word on election protection and to call the election protection hotline. With that, Jeannie, I spoke as fast as I could. I apologize for being late and all my technical stuff, but I am here to answer questions.
No, are you kidding? You did a great job getting a lot of information out in a very limited amount of time. And one thing that, something that came up is, I'm afraid, wait a second, hold on. Do you think the long ballot will impact, increase or decrease mail-in voting? I think that, yeah, I think a lot of people are going to be overwhelmed by it. We know here in Maricopa County that it's going to be 2 pages. We had somebody speak, I think it may have been Jen Marsden from the League of Counties in Arizona, talking about the 2-page ballot and how, when you're trying to count all of those votes, but let's say a couple, you got 2 pages and, this married couple accidentally mixes up their ballots, and let's say the husband gets page 1 and puts both of page 1 in his, and the wife gets page, like, they can't count those, and I guess my question to you, Penny, is if when that happens, as it inevitably will, right? Or, we know that people forget to sign their envelope. What does happen to those ballots if they are, mixed up? Does the county
So
or does, yeah.
So current, I can tell you with the single ballot, they do verify that signature, and if the ballot doesn't match the envelope, they, I think, try to reach the voter to say, that's part of that curing process. So that's in a separate file, that is the signature non-verified file, okay? So they have to verify the signature against the ballot first, then they separate it. So that's what's going to happen. Now we got a slightly different problem, which is the contents inside the envelope is 2 sheets, and those sheets aren't matched in terms of ballot, what happens. So all of us are going to, we're still trying to struggle with how do we educate the voters about this. So one thing that, Jeannie, I want to share with you is, we know we want to get the women's vote out because that's going to make them a huge difference. So we're going to do a lot of texting and phone banking. We would love for help from Secular Arizona to do that. And part of our messaging is going to be about, fill your envelope properly, or, stuff the envelope properly and stuff like that. And ours is to the voters directly, texting, phone banking, and saying, hey, don't mix up the ballots. Okay, make sure your ballot is in your envelope. And we're going to have to do that. Again, Jean, it costs us money, all of us, to do this kind of work to protect democracy, but stakes are so high, we have to do that.
And I wonder, it makes me wonder, because here we've got this, in my opinion, a really stand-up, outgoing county recorder here who happens to be a Republican. He unfortunately lost his race to an election denier, which to me is kind of terrifying. So I know that, some of these processes that were implemented when Adrian Fontes was still our county recorder exist today. Like, I know now that when they receive my ballot, I get a notification. So I'm hopeful that perhaps maybe some of these county recorders in counties where we are going to have, a couple of sheets are sending out messages. I don't know. I haven't seen anything like that because we haven't gotten our general election ballots yet. But I do hope that they do communicate, because it's really convenient for me to get an email and a text saying, hey, just so you know, we got your ballot. There's no problem with it. It's about to be processed. Have you heard anything about them doing that? Yeah.
Okay, so Jean, a couple of things we should be mindful of. They're going to point us to beballotready.vote. I'm not seeing any instructions on this particular issue, but it is a worrisome issue, okay? We're going to continue to get the text. I think it is going to be incumbent on so many of us to educate the voter about this. It's an extension of the earlier education of, sign your envelope before you turn it in, okay? And with 2 sheets, it becomes imperative that, we push the mail ballot process, okay? Regardless of that potential confusion, only because then they're going to more likely to take the time to, do the full ballot. That's important. 2 things I wanted to ask for all of your help. One is, of course, if the voter goes to Vote 411, they can actually work through the ballot on Vote 411 and print themselves a sample ballot. I understand they're not going to be sending out sample ballots because it's getting so expensive, all of this stuff. So that's one thing. We should be holding this legislature accountable for creating this chaos. and this expense to the voters, and not in any effort to further the best for our communities, okay, which is what's very worrisome and shameful. That's one. Jean, the other thing that we would really love, because you are a nonpartisan group, is one of the key things that we need to do is start shaming these candidates who don't give their information on a nonpartisan platform. And we have a huge thanking and shaming campaign that we need help on. So we'll be, social media amplifying, and we'd like you all to go to Vote 411. And if your candidate is there and they put no information, it's time to call their office and say, what the heck's wrong with you? Why aren't you giving us information? Okay, because on Vote 411, they can't just give us sound bites. They have to answer some legitimate questions. Okay, they can give sound bites, but not just that. Okay, so we urge your support, we urge your help, and I'm always grateful and honored to be called to present with your group. So thank you so much.
Pinny, I don't want to take any more time because we're already a little bit over time, but what you said too about candidates kind of trying to exist in the dark right now, we're seeing this a lot with school board candidates. Because I can only assume that they're being coached to not give answers. If you go to just about any, even extremist school board candidates' website, they do, Moms for Liberty, Turning Point USA, Arizona Women of Action, I think they're instructing them to be as vague as possible. And so in some cases, you can't even do research because they will not answer a basic question like, do you support the bond and override? They'll say things like, let's go have coffee and talk about it. Well, that's not really efficient. If you don't have your platform on your website, on your Facebook page, on your Twitter account, whatever, then you're trying to keep us in the dark. So, I recommend to you definitely doing that research and taking a look at what they say. Because, if you're a public school candidate and you're hoping to be on your board, but you do not support bonds and override at a time where our public schools are wildly underfunded, that kind of tells me all I need to know about you. So I guess what I'm saying is just, you really are going to have to do research this time, folks, because the other side is purposefully keeping you in the dark. So with that, Penny, go ahead.
Jean, before I forget, mylwv.org is no longer our domain because we've moved to a new platform. I just put the URL, which is just basically LWVAZ.org. You may go there and say, oh, it doesn't exist and I don't want them. We just went live on Monday. That's fine.
Okay. That's good to know as well. Okay, I love this too. I just want to point out one last thing. Jay said that he is going to have 2 different ballot bubble parties so that they can sit down maybe with a beer or a glass of wine and vote together. And I think that that's a really great way to not only, ensure that you're filling out your ballot thoroughly and correctly, but you're also there in fellowship with other people. Like, who could get mad at that? I think that's lovely. And I think we should do that more often. Last thing, Penny, because again, we're at 1:06, we're 6 minutes over. So this is the question that I ask everybody at the end of these Friday discussions, Penny. In a time where we are so overwhelmed with information and voters have to be more informed than ever before, what gives you hope?
Me?
Yeah, you.
I'm a huge glasses half full person. My group says, oh my God, here she goes again, Pollyanna. I believe, I really am always hopeful. I think hope is back again, as past First Lady said. Hope has always been live with me. I come from a bunch of, grumpy family that's not on the same page always, but I'm like, yay, it's hopeful, it looks good. But this time I feel really hopeful. And look, Jean, look at constantly for the last 6 years, we have overcome, really more than that, bad legislation, fought against it. People have spoken up. Look at the number of people increased on RTS. Look at the number of people paying attention to ballot proposition. Look at the number of people voting by mail, even during, even with the campaign that says, don't vote by mail, okay? So yes, so I'm a hopeful person. I tend to be hopeful anyway, but I'm even more hopeful now because we're engaged. And here's why I'm most hopeful, because it's always us, the women, that are going to be saving the world.
Oh my goodness.
But that's it.
Amen, sister. Amen. We just said amen at our Secular AZ Friday speaker series. I appreciate you, Pinny, and all the work that you and the League of Women Voters in Arizona does. Honestly, I'm so grateful. And somebody just said here, I feel much better prepared to fill in the ballot. So you get your wings today, and you deserve to have the very best weekend ever, as does everybody else who's here. Thank you so much for joining us, Penny.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate you all. Bye-bye.
All right. Take care, everybody. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.